Welcome everyone, I'm Dale and this is Cinema Historia. An ex-bounty hunter, a Mexican rebel, and a gang of hired gunmen. This week we're going back to 1972 for an American Western film called Joe Kidd, starring Clint Eastwood, Robert Duvall, and John Saxon. And this is directed by John Sturges. So where does our story begin this week? Well, our story begins in the town of Sonora, New Mexico in the early 1900s. Joe Kidd, played by Clint Eastwood, a former bounty hunter, is in jail for hunting deer on native land and disturbing the peace. Meanwhile, Mexican bandito and revolutionary Louis Chama, played by John Saxon, has organized a revolt against the local landowners who have been throwing the poor off their ancestral lands and raids the Sonora courthouse. Frank Harlan, played by Robert Duvall, a wealthy landowner of some 600,000 acres, has formed a posse to capture Chama. By reputation, Harlan wants to hire Kidd for his posse for $500. Reluctant at first, Kidd agrees after learning Chama's band has raided his ranch as well. Armed with new-style rifles, the posse is made up of Lamar, Mingo, and Gannon, ruthless men excellent in marksmanship. The next morning, the posse rides into a village near Chama's hideout and forces the villagers into the local church at gunpoint. Harlan and his men threaten to kill 5 Mexican hostages unless Chama surrenders. With the Kidd becoming restless and uneasy, Harlan no longer trusts Kidd and throws him into the church as well. Unbeknownst to Harlan, Helen, a female captive to cook the meals, is Chama's ladylove and friends with the other Mexican hostages. With the help of the priest finding a gun in the church, the Kidd wants to use Helen to derive a daring escape. So, does the Kidd manage to escape and change sides? Does Kidd promise Harlan he will deliver Chama to Sheriff Mitchell in Sonora? Or does a shootout and a steam train interception give high-powered results? You can only guess. Released in the United States in July of 1972, it ultimately returned $5.8 million in domestic rentals, making it one of the highest-grossing westerns of the year. The impressive outdoor scenery is California's Eastern Sierra Nevada range and the Alabama Hills near Lone Pine, California. Lone Pine is 200 miles north of Hollywood and has been used many times for location shooting since the early days of the movie industry. An 80% rating from the film critic Rotten Tomatoes makes such claims as a breezy open-air western finds a formidable punch, never straying from Eastwood's Clint's jaw aesthetic. A prime example of a good sturdy bread-and-butter western. And Variety wrote, under John Sturges' direction, the screenplay is sufficiently compelling to keep guns popping and bodies falling. That's how I like my western. And the trivia question this week, was this the last time someone else did something for our star, Clint Eastwood? Was this the last time someone else did something for our star, Clint Eastwood? So, a little more history and the answer to our trivia question coming up next. Now, since the story of our film was written by Elmore Leonard, that's the subject of this week's history. So, Elmore Leonard was an American novelist, short story writer, and screenwriter. Born Elmore John Leonard Jr. in New Orleans, Louisiana, October 11, 1925, his father, a site locator for General Motors, caused the family to move frequently. Settling in Detroit in 1934, there were 2 news items in the 1930s that would influence Leonard's future works. From 1931 to 1934, gangsters Bonnie and Clyde were on the rampage, and in 1935, the baseball team, the Detroit Tigers, won the World Series, developing Leonard with a lifelong fascination for sports and crime. Graduating from the University of Detroit Jesuit High School in 1943, Leonard earned the nickname Dutch after Tigers pitcher Dutch Leonard. Enrolling at the University of Detroit in 1946, he pursued writing more seriously, entering short stories in contests and submitting them to magazines for publication. Graduating in 1950 with a bachelor's degree in English and philosophy, Leonard had his first success in 1951 when Argosy published his short story, Trial of the Apaches. During the 1950s and early 1960s, he continued writing westerns, publishing more than 30 short stories. 5 of his westerns were adapted as movies before 1972, The Tall T in 1957, 310 to Yuma in 1957, Hombre in 1967, Valdez is Coming in 1971, one of my favorites, and our film Joe Kidd in 1972. Later film adaptations included Get Shorty in 1995, Jackie Brown in 1997, and Out of Sight in 1998. With his novel selling tens of millions of copies, including the 1985 novel Glitch, which spent 16 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, Stephen King named Leonard the Great American Writer. And British journalist Anthony Lane wrote that Leonard was hailed as one of the best crime writers in the land. Among many other honors, Elmore Leonard won the 2009 Penn Lifetime Award and the 2012 Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters. Isn't that amazing? And the answer to our trivia question this week, was this the last time someone else did something for our star Clint Eastwood? Yes, it certainly was. This was the last time someone else, being John Sturges, directed Clint Eastwood in a Western. Eastwood would appear in more westerns, all directed by himself. In fact, the production company of our film, the Malpaso Company, is Clint Eastwood's production company. Deriving the name from Malpaso Creek in California, it was established in 1967, giving Eastwood more creative control over his films, beginning with the 1968 Western Hang 'em High. Eastwood became known for tight shooting schedules, finishing films on time and on or under budget, typically in much less time than most production companies. Isn't that cool? I'd like to take this time to thank all my new subscribers. Thanks for jumping on board and helping support my channel. Next week, we're going to the moon. Thanks for watching, everyone, and hope to see you back next week.